Over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about the Chicago Bulls, their shooting woes, who's going to take the last shot. But one thing I've not talked a lot about in depth is what is the defense going to look like for the Chicago Bulls? Because on today's episode, I want to talk. Can Tiago Splitter turn this team into a top 15 defense right away, much like he did with the Portland Trailblazers? We're talking about why he could, some of the obstacles that he could face as well as the head coach. But I have my faith in why one of the best things about this rebuild and the thing that we could see initially right away is improvement with the defense. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to start off with this one. Can Tiago Splitter turn this team into a top 15 defense right away? That's one of the biggest things and biggest woes that the Chicago Bulls have had over the last couple of years. Last year, the Chicago Bulls averaged allowing 121.5 points per game. That was 28th in the NBA. The Bulls could score the ball, they could move the ball, but there was no consistent defense on the floor at all. We just didn't have the personnel that really shaped up to do that. And now this roster is a lot different in that regard. You have Nic Claxton as the rim protector. You have Okoro who can provide some on-ball pressure, especially with, as it stands right now, he's probably going to be the backup two guard. You have Buzelis who provides length, switchability, and he grew as an on-ball defender last year, but he still needs to do some work as an on-ball defender. You have Caleb Wilson now here who, you know what he is as an athlete, and defense is probably going to be how he makes his name right away. And then you also have guys like Leonard who can provide some, a stronger forward and some size and some switchability. And Tre Jones, who's always been a defensive pit bull for the Chicago Bulls, right? The defense can improve, and we know that. We have the roster for the defense to improve, but a top 15, top half of the league defense is going to require discipline, communication, and setting clear roles. And that's why I think a couple of things point out to why the Bulls can do this. Number one, Nic Claxton. For so long, the Chicago Bulls have had to cover up for a slow center that could only play in drop coverage. And even in the minutes that Zach Collins did play, we know it just wasn't a lot of those minutes out there, right? Claxton gives the Chicago Bulls, on paper, rim protection, switchability to add to how this team needs to play, and we no longer have to build every possession around, protecting the drop coverage that Vooch can play because Nic Claxton can switch and come out and rim protect more than Nikola Vucevic ever did. It helps that. He plays at a high level on the screen as well. He knows how to recover, and the weak side defense that he does provide in case our guards do get hit in the pick and roll defense and beat in the pick and roll defense, it's there. Now, of course, there's concern with that as well. Nic Claxton's defensive impact has slid over the last couple of years. I have a whole episode on the channel on that, on why, between the change of the defensive system, as well as his own back injuries and woes. And so I'm not saying that Nic Claxton has to be perfect. I'm not even saying that he has to be the backbone of this defense, but him alone provides something that this team has not had at the defensive side of the ball for a while. But he's not the only one. Let's look at the defensive pairing of Caleb Wilson and Buzelis. This is one of the ones that I'm most excited about because these guys create what I call defensive events, right? Defensive event creators. What I mean by that is this. Shot blocking. Both of those guys provide that. That is an event that completely can change, the style that other teams play. Because if you have to worry about, even if you get past and get to the rim, somebody's still catching up on you. That's Modest, that's Caleb Wilson, and that's Nic Claxton. All those guys can provide that. They also know how to get into the passing lanes, right? Both have the length to try to erase some of the mistakes that we're naturally going to make on the defensive side of the ball, and I hope that. If both these guys help the Chicago Bulls not only create transition opportunities, but then also finish in transition, but that's offense. We're focused on the defense here. It's going to be a big part. Now, there's also some negative and downsides in regards to that one, right? You're still looking at Caleb Wilson, how he adjusts to the NBA physicality and size. Modest still has a problem with dealing some physicality too at times, right? Both are going to still need to add strength over the course of their NBA career, but with the timing, the rotation, the consistency, building chemistry with each other, having a guy like Nic Claxton. I once said about Nic Claxton, I want to see him play the quarterback of the defense role, meaning that from his standpoint, being, one of the tallest players on the court as well, be able to call out, hey, he's about to set a screen on your left. Those little bit of things there, having that defensive IQ makes such a difference for a team that's trying to move into that, right? So I think that Caleb and Modest, they provide the Chicago Bulls the type of defensive chaos that helps their offense, but also it's something that we've been missing from this side for the Chicago Bulls, basically since Alex Caruso and Javonte Green have not been on this team. They can provide some of that, right? And then I want to say this too, and I'm not saying that it's going to happen for sure, but I do think Isaac Okoro could make his role here more than what people think. I get it. His offense was trash last year. His defense, it was marginally good. There were times where it was really good. There was times where it was suspect. I think what we have now here, we don't need Isaac Okoro to guard up as much, right? He's moving from being the 3 to being the 2. And I think now you're going to be able to use Isaac Okoro to guard more 1s and 2s. I think that part of it, it gives Tiago Splitter a point of attack defender that he can use in a similar way that he employed Matisse Thybulle last year. I'm not saying he's as good as Matisse Thybulle. I'm not saying any of that. But he can be used in similar ways. And because now you're not looking at him to guard 3s and 4s, you're looking at him to guard 1s and 2s, I do think that there's a chance. I'm not saying for sure that he's going to be into the rotation. I'm just saying that he has a chance now to carve out more of a role for himself on this Bulls team that plays more towards his strengths. The offensive side of the ball is the offensive side of the ball. I'll say that Isaac Okoro may be cut a little bit better than other players that we had on the team. We'll see how that works out for this team this year. But overall, I think that this guy, Isaac Okoro, could be one of those players, along with Trey Jones, that helps set the defensive tone coming off the bench. And I really like that. I don't think he's going to be a flashy Bull. I'm not even saying for sure he's going to have guaranteed minutes, but I do think that there's a pathway for him there to try to make out and carve out a role for himself. But I think when you look at this, you all have to go back to what Tiago Splitter. What is Tiago Splitter as a coach, and why do I have confidence that Tiago can coach this team to being a much better defense? I got a couple of things that I want to look at here, and some things that he did, right? Number one, what the Portland Trailblazers did last year, they were 16th in defensive rating last year, which, again, almost top half of the league. Now, they also were 16th the year prior, but I think this last season, it was just a little bit different in how they got it done, and we're going to explain that here with this episode, right? So when you look at Tiago Splitter, what he did that makes me believe he can turn around the Chicago Bulls defense is, one, he used multiple defensive coverages. It wasn't just a single defensive coverage that then became the moniker. He really adapted that coverage to depending on what the team could do. They didn't rely on, a pick and roll coverage every single night. What they did, they played drop coverage behind Donovan Clingan, right? So, again, we'd like to think of drop coverage as a bad thing, but it's a bad thing only when a player can only play drop coverage. They employed Donovan Clingan in a way to where they had the drop coverage behind Donovan Clingan, meaning that if Donovan, you drop behind Donovan Clingan if you get beat. So let's say Josh Giddey or Norman Powell get beat on a pick and roll. You then have Nic Claxton move up into that, and then you have those players drop behind and reset the defense behind Donovan Clingan, right? But then also he did employ the blitz and doubled elite on-ball creators as well. That's another thing that we just didn't do a lot under Billy Donovan. Now, I don't think we had the personnel to do it at a high level and do it consistently either, if I'm being 100% fair, right, and not just judging Billy Donovan. But I think now we have more guys that can play in that type of coverage, and I think that's going to play in regards to this one. What they also did is they switched their 1 and their 3. They switched Drew Holiday into Toumani Camara a lot last season. You can do similar things in that now, right? Now we know that, Josh Giddey isn't the strongest defender. Norman Powell's a solid team defender, but I wouldn't even call him a great one-on-one defender either. But I do think that how you look at how they did that, you can implore that too. Then also, they let Donovan Clingan and Robert Williams roam away from weak shooters to then provide more pressure up front, right? And so that's a good thing. And the one thing that Tiago Splitter does too that we did not have at all of the 6 years under Billy Donovan is he changed the matchups during the game and completely changed the personnel and who you're guarding intentionally to throw off offenses. When you go back and look at the tape that Tiago Splitter did defensively, there's a lot there, especially for my X's and O's people who love digging into that type of thing. There's there, right? I also think that before the play-in tournament, what Portland was described as is a defense that used Holiday and Camara to put pressures on point guards, but then at the same time, they used the center to put pressure on other perimeter players as well. That matters because when you look at the Chicago Bulls and what we have here, we have defenders that all have different strengths. Nic Claxton can switch, he can play at the level, and he can drop. With his length and his ability to recover, him playing drop defense is a lot different than Nikola Vucevic playing drop defense. But because Nic Claxton can do all three of those things, can switch, play at a high level, and in drop, it opens up what you can do systematically, right? Again, I'm over-explaining this because I know a lot of Bulls fans are going to hear drop coverage and immediately think something negative, right? But the reason why Vooch was so bad because of drop coverage is because that's all he could play was drop coverage. It's a lot different here. That you have guys like Trey Jones, Isaac Okoro, Caleb Wilson that can pressure the ball. Then also Modest Buzelis and Caleb Wilson can provide weak side defense with their length. So that's another way that Tiago Splitter can employ those guys a little differently, right? And then I'll say this too. Again, I'm not calling, much like I said for Isaac Okoro, but this is the type of system where if Patrick Williams is like, forget Patrick Williams' offense. If Patrick Williams is going to provide any type of benefit to this team, I want to see it be defensively. And with the way that Tiago Splitter employs defense and does those different things, Patrick Williams can make a name for himself here. Now, you can say the same thing about Dailyn Swain and Noah Essengate with how they have defended in other places, in college and in other leagues. We haven't really seen that at the NBA level yet, but I do think that Tiago's going to be able to change the coverage based off what players that we have out there, what the other team is doing, and he's also going to make those defensive adjustments throughout the game, right? Good defensive coaching isn't about choosing between switching or drop coverage. It's about how you know how those five guys out there on the court, you can employ different things with those five guys, but have it work in synergy. And that's what Tiago Splitter really did. I also think when you look at this, the Portland Trail Blazers really controlled the other team's shot profile. Portland last year finished 5th in blocks. They allowed the 6th-fewest three-pointers made at 12.5 per game. They were amongst one of the best teams in the league as far as opponent finishing near the rim, 14th overall in defensive rating as well. These are things where you look at the Bulls roster, we can simulate some of those same things, right? The combination of those things show that it's more than just random shot blocking. This is a intent that they're doing and how. It's an organized defense that's moving with this. Tiago Splitter's defense was willing to concede, above the break threes. That's what they did. They gave the above the break threes from weaker shooters, right? And that kept Donovan Clingan and Robert Williams positioned to be able to contest shots at the rim. That's calculated, right? That's more than just saying go out there and play harder that Billy Donovan would say with his team when he was running the offense. And that's where it gets a little bit different for this Bulls team. So I think these things translate to Chicago in a few different ways. Nic Claxton is more mobile than Donovan Clingan ever was in regards to that. He's not as big or as strong as Donovan Clingan, right? But I do think Nic Claxton can cover more space in those areas. I do think that that's going to allow Tiago Splitter to protect the rim without needing to play him in drop coverage nearly as much. You have Caleb and Modest as well who can provide more weak side shot blocking and potential than you look at with other teams. And if Modest grows as a better off-ball defender as well, that really does help in regards to that one. So I think when you look at the Bulls structure defensively, you're looking at it trying to employ a lot of the same things that the Portland Trail Blazers did, which is this next thing. The Portland Trail Blazers was a physical defense, right? They put pressure on other teams. When you look at their early season defense, and again, they changed their defense as the season went on, they forced turnovers to at approximately 20% of opponents' possessions. Just think about that. That's a fifth of the total possessions for a team ended up in turnovers. What does that do? For a team like the Chicago Bulls, they get you out in transition. They get you easy buckets at the rim. They get you chances to put the defense on the heels. They may even get you foul opportunities to put the team in foul trouble, right? That's about pressure. Pressure isn't just about gambling for steals, right? It's about setting a mark, being intentional again. That's what I really like about Tiago Splitter's defense and me diving into this. It's all intentional. This isn't just happenstance that he did it, right? Now, Tamari Kamara last season set an NBA record drawing 106 offensive fouls, right? And he was guarding the opponent's best scorer. Now, I don't know if we're going to have somebody that does that part of it, right? But I do think that you look at how Portland's defenders crowded the lanes. They fought through screens really hard. They forced offensive players to operate through contact. That's all in intentionality that you can bring an identity to the defensive side of the ball, right? Tiago also created what was last season a defensive box award in Portland, right? It was a recognition of players that deserve to be rewarded for the defensive work. And that may sound like something that's small and that could be overlooked and that's a rah-rah thing that may not. But when you have players that are all, galvanized towards that, it matters something. So I think when you look at setting a better defensive tone and culture, Tiago Splitter has already shown that he can do that. So what did Portland do? Full court pressure after made baskets, right? No longer just giving up the ball. More aggressive at the nail and at the pin downs, which is really good. And then also, when you look at how they try to lock down movement shooters, when you had shooters that shot off movement, came off screen, stuff like that, they forced those guys into awkward positions by fighting through screens and just that little extra bump that you did. And Tiago coached to that. Right now, yeah, you have really good on-ball defenders that do that, but that's good. The thing that Tiago Splitter does so well is that he matches the roles to the personnel, right? Yes, he likes to push players to do some things that are outside themselves, but he matches that role. So you had Drew Holiday and Tamari Kamara providing pressure on ball handlers, stuff like that. You had Robert Williams and Donovan Clingan protecting the rim, rebounding, switching, those type of things, right? But then the remaining defenders on the team, they stayed connected. They rotated. They didn't have breakdowns on the defensive side of the ball, right? In more than 1,000 minutes played with Holiday, playing beside either Donovan Clingan or Robert Williams, Portland only allowed 106.7 points per 100 possessions. That is excellent, right? That means that they actually produced at a high level. So when you look at the Chicago Bulls equivalent to that, you have Nic Claxton, of course, as your back-end anchor. You have Buzelis taking that secondary wing matchup. You have Caleb Wilson, who can be the roamer, the playmaker, the rebounder, that type of thing in transition. And then you have Gideon Norman-Powell, who, they're going to have to be protected on the perimeter, but you have players that can do that a little bit more. The challenge for Tiago Splitter is going to be whether to find enough offense in those defensive combinations that he's going to throw out. And I think that he did that. And the ultimate thing that Tiago Splitter did with the defense here is that they got better as the season went on. With 1 week remaining in the season, the Portland Trail Blazers had a 113 defensive rating, and they ranked 13th, right? They had opponents held down 103 minutes per 100 possessions, and during an 8-2 stretch as well, their best mark in the league, they were one of the best defenses in the league, right? So when you talk about the players becoming more, comfortable, they also got healthier as the season went on, right? The roles became clear, and they rested in that a lot. And let's keep in mind, he got a defensive commitment from an extremely young team that was unproven, and they bought into that on top of their coaching changing and all those things happened, right? So I think when you look at all this, it's there. There's a lot of things that you can point towards that are going to be here for the Chicago Bulls and a lot of validity to what's going to happen here. Again, potentially. It's all potentially for the Bulls on the defensive side of the ball. This is where I want to see the Bulls make the biggest leap. It makes their offense easier. It makes, the offensive game easier on guys that are still trying to create their own shot. And it comes down to, let's just be real. It's exciting fucking basketball. It's exciting basketball when you're able to play like that on the defensive side of the ball, and that's what you got to do, man. So, I'm not predicting the Chicago Bulls are going to be there. Being top 15 is not going to be automatic by any stretch of the imagination because you do have some limitations. Josh Giddey and Norman Powell have to be, how they handle quicker backcourts. Smaller backcourts is going to be interesting there, right? Being targeted in pick and rolls for Josh Giddey is going to be there. Then, of course, you're trusting that Caleb Wilson and Buzelis are going to be able to deal with the physicality and the stronger, harsher forwards. And then, of course, you're betting on Nic Claxton's health and him to get out of that defensive decline and get back to the defensive player that he was before. Those are all bets that Chicago Bulls are taking. But when you have a coach that can build a defensive culture, a coach that can get players to buy in, you start believing that those things are a little bit more possible. So let's see what the Bulls can do with it. And like I said, I just wanted to talk about the defense. Like, as much as offense is the easier thing to talk about, you talk about made threes, open shots, percentages, all that type of stuff. Defense is really where if you can get a young team to play defense right early on, that's where you can start really surprising some people and doing some things that could be a little bit different, right? And we'll see what's going to happen in regards to that. Now, it all comes down to the rotation, right? And I think through the rotation for the Bulls, we know a couple of things, or we can assume a couple of things, right? We know that the projected starters are Josh Giddey, Norman Powell, Caleb Wilson, Buzelis, and Nic Claxton. Wherever you have Caleb at the 3 or the 4, Modest at the 3 or the 4, that's what you really have to, right? That's a lineup that all has size positionally, right? You have Norman Powell who's going to provide some spacing. You have the interchangeable forward pieces. If Caleb Wilson's shooting is ahead like it looks, it adds even more shooting. And so that lineup just fits better together. And I'm starting to settle in on, right, I've been trying to do a lot of talking on who the bench unit's going to be as it stands right now. I know there's talk about Ben Mathurin and some other stuff, but as it stands right now, it seems like your 5 players off the bench, if Tiago even goes 10 deep, he could go 9 deep, is going to be Trey Jones, Jalen Smith, Zach Collins. If those guys are healthy, those are going to be your first 3 players off the bench. Then Leonard Miller, I think that he's carved out himself for his role, and he's probably ahead of, the guys that are going to be fighting for minutes. And then as it stands right now, I would not be surprised if Isaac Okoro is that fifth guy off the bench, because Dailyn Swain, you don't trust him right now. Again, maybe that changes in training camp. And so that leaves players that are fighting their way into the rotation of being Rob Dillingham, Dailyn Swain, Patrick Williams, Noah Essengay. Those four players are going to have an uphill battle to earn minutes for this team, especially if they want consistent minutes, right? And so I think when you look at the bench unit, Tre Jones is the stabilizer. Not only is he a defensive player, he also gives effort on the offensive side of the ball. He can hit shots. Leonard Miller brings that physicality, and he outplayed Patrick Williams at the end of last season. He can back up either Modest or Caleb Wilson. Jalen Smith gives you floor stretching, rim protection, and he can be a stretch big in regards to that one as well. And then Zach Collins brings that interior two-way play. If he's healthy, he brings that. I can see Tiago Splitter liking those guys, along with Isaac Okoro, who can guard, one of the best bench scorers on the other team. Then the Rob Dillinghams, the Dailyn Swain, Patrick Williams, Noah Essengay. All these guys are fighting for minutes, and it's going to be an uphill battle for them. Rob Dillingham is going to have to prove that his offensive upside is worth playing him. Dailyn Swain is going to have to shake off a rough summer league and show that he can crack that rotation. Otherwise, he's going to be down in the G League. Noah Essengay could also find himself down there. And Patrick Williams, he's either going to have to change his mind in the new regime or he's going to fall by the wayside. That's it. This new regime isn't going to give players minutes based off a draft selection that they didn't make. It's just not going to happen here. And so I think even the players that they did draft aren't going to be in the rotation just because of where they got drafted in the case of Dailyn Swain. It's going to be a battle for the rotation for the Chicago Bulls team. And I tell you what, I actually like that. I'm actually pretty excited about that because for the first time in a long time, it doesn't seem like you're coming into the season with, oh, well, we know P. Will is going to play 18 minutes. Oh, we're going to give Dailyn Swain because he was the 15th overall pick. This coaching staff, this front office, I don't even think this front office wants it. They want players that are going to go out there and get it. And let's see who goes out there and get it, because there's a lot of toughness on this team, and part of the big toughness of it is how you're going to crack this damn rotation. So let me know what you guys think on that down below. The Chicago Bulls were historically bad defensively last season. Do you think that Tiago Splitter can bring enough as far as a system and player usage to get this Chicago Bulls team as a better defense? Do you think they could be a top 15, top half of the league defense as well? Like I think. The jump is not going to be automatic, but it's a possibility of it being there. Let me know what you guys think on that part down below. What do you think about the rotation as well? Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or a live stream. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of Breaks